Talk about a guy that if you put your trust into him, yesterday down the desert, holy mother of the fantasy gods, did he pay instant dividends for you? Charbonnet all day. Chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug. Zach Charbonnet against the Arizona Cardinals. Kenneth Walker III was a scratch, was not active in this game due to an ankle injury. Charbonnet comes in, gets the lion's share of the touches, and plays like an all-pro. 22 carries, $134 on the ground, not one but two touchdowns. And on top of that, if you're in PPR leagues, you probably disrobed because he caught 7 balls for 59 yards. Talk about a big fat cherry, the entire bottle of cherries on top of the Sunday. Didn't score a receiving touchdown, but it doesn't matter. He had the most valuable line in half-point PPR fantasy leagues in week number 14. Schedule coming. Green Bay, 17th most fantasy points allowed at the running back position. Then Minnesota, 30th most. So they've been rather stout against fantasy running backs. And then the Bears. And the Bears, clearly the biggest weakness they have is defending the run. They have been skewered by opposing rushing attacks. They have allowed 5th most fantasy points per game to the running back position on the year. Charbonnet on the year, 3.61 yak per attempt. Stud. 26 missed tackles on 97 rush attempts. That's off the charts efficiency. We'll see about Kenneth Walker III, whether or not he's going to return to action this week. But I think Charbonnet should get at least 10 to 12 touches moving forward. Man, he's damn good.
Yeah, he's going to continue to get the touches, and you got some good matchups coming up. Most notably, this one coming up week 15, primetime game against Green Bay. Even if Kenneth Walker is back, how healthy is he going to be? Charbonnet is going to get some touches. 7 receptions for 59 yards, like you said. I think maybe he gets used more in the pass game. 134 yards, 2 touchdowns, 22 carries. I'm a Kenneth Walker owner in 2 of my 3 leagues, and that was the best performance, of course, from a Seattle running back all year long, and it wasn't from Kenneth Walker. The offensive line's really been the issue for Seattle in run blocking. They're not getting a whole bunch of push up front. But, the way that he ran the ball yesterday with this matchup coming against Green Bay, he could be a league winner, man. So I like Zach Charbonnet moving forward, at least for the next couple weeks here.
Yeah, I do too, man. And, yeah, even with Kenneth Walker the third back, again, I think 10 to 12 touches entirely doable for him. My mouth is watering with that Bears matchup. In fantasy Super Bowls this year in week 17. Even on 10 to 12 touches, he could go for 60, 70 combined yards and possibly a touchdown. Let's go to the guy that was kind of the hero. Or if people leaned on him, I think he's a Rodney Dangerfield all-star, a little bit disrespected, and that's Rachaad White. And he was the incumbent starter. Everybody and their great-grandmother was singing the praises of Bucky Irving and hopped aboard with both cheeks firmly planted there on the bandwagon. Bucky exits due to a back injury. Remember, he came in questionable with a hip. Back flared up, and you didn't see him again. White got the mother load of the carries. Now, Sean Tucker had 3 carries for 42 yards, but White, 17 touches on the ground, 90 yards and a touchdown. Caught 2 balls for 19, got a receiving touchdown. Easily a top 5 line in half-point PPR leagues this week. That, of course, came against Vegas. Schedule upcoming. At LAC, they've allowed the 4th fewest fantasy points, the running back position on the season. Giving up quite a bit in terms of yards per carry, but they're not giving up a whole lot of touchdowns. That's why they rank low in that category. Then Dallas, in action right now. They've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points, the running back position. And Chase Brown just had a long reception. Doesn't help that cause there. And then Carolina after that, who's allowed the most fantasy points, the running back position. I don't care if he's in the lead chair. I don't care if he's second chair. I think Rachaad White has got to be minimum flex play regardless the rest of the season based on the matchups alone and the fact that the guy is a check-down favorite of Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, man. The pass catching is really what gives him that value. He could catch 6 to 7 targets. The problem is you never really know what you're going to get in that backfield. But if Bucky Irving, it's something that you obviously have to monitor. But if he's dealing with injuries, multiple injuries, now a back injury, yeah, I think he could do much worse than White with these upcoming matchups, especially as a pass catcher. So I like him moving forward, at least as a flex option if you're desperate.
Yeah, no doubt. 3.21 yak per attempt on the season, 21 missed tackles for us on 120 rush attempts. Ain't too shabby there. Let's talk about a guy that you talked up last week. And if you were dealing to get Adam Thielen, congratulations off of waivers because he paid a monster dividend a couple of weeks ago. 9 total receptions for 102 yards against the Philadelphia Eagles. Didn't find the end zone, but you look at the matches that are coming. Dallas, 14th most fantasy points allowed of the WR position. Arizona, 19th most, the middle of the road there. Fantasy points allowed of WRs. And at Tampa, we know the issues of that secondary all season long. The 11th most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Adam Thielen has caught 77.8% of his targets this season. That's terrific. 2.10 yards per route run. And given the ascension, given the improvements of Bryce Young, and the fact that that defense still stinks, and they're going to be playing from behind in a lot of games, we're going to have to at least outshoot the opponents. Look, I think Adam Thielen, he stays healthy, minimum wide receiver 3, and is going to have some wide receiver 2 numbers, maybe occasionally even wide receiver 1 numbers during the fantasy playoffs. Am I cray-cray?
No, I mean, he's averaged over 21 PPR points the last 2 weeks. He's actually been the 7th best wide receiver. So he's been top 10. And, you look at some of these other guys that are available. They're not available anymore. The reason I've liked him so much when we talked like fantasy heroes last week was no Jalen Coker, right? And he's the Panthers' primary slot receiver. But with him out, Thielen's working more out of the slot. Favorable matchup, favorable schedule the rest of the way for receivers. And like you said, it all comes down to Bryce Young. He's playing with a ton of confidence. He's pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. But when he's not, he's using the slot receivers a lot, checking down a lot. So I like Adam Thielen continuing to move forward with this matchup, with this schedule for sure.
All right, let's work in another guy that was a standout, and you want to talk about monster numbers. So Sam Darnold had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I plead the fifth catches or passing touchdowns in that game. The guy that caught 3 of the receiving touchdowns, Jordan Addison. So Justin Jefferson had a great game as well, but Jordan Addison, 8 receptions, $133, and those 3 tutties scored in the game against the ATL. Next 3 matchups, Chicago, all right, 27th most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, but again, they're on a Caribbean island right now thinking about the Mai Tais. They're checked out. At Seattle, 20th most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, and then Green Bay, the 22nd most fantasy points. So by letter of law, looking at the data, season-long data that's out there, horrendous fantasy playoff schedule, but a guy that's well north of 2 in terms of yards per route run on the season, and he's wide receiver 13 on the year, and average depth of target at 14.7. So Jordan Addison, is he going to have some flexy sexy appeal, wide receiver 3 employment capability in 12-team and deeper leagues, or is he going to be a colossal buster in the playoffs based on the matchups that he has?